Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I'm the Serious Strategy Gamer, and we are returning to Let's Play of Hearts of Iron 4, where we're trying out strategic bombers. I'll be dialing down the speed of this a little bit, because we are getting closer to war. It is 1938, and 1938 is an extremely interesting year, and I'm going to talk about that once we have made the new decisions over here. So, we've just finished, I don't even remember what we finished, but we do need to decide on our next research. Now, since we do want to focus on strategic bombers, we have all of that in the back, let's say. So that's fine. We are researching the air doctrine, so that's okay too. Industry, that's all settled for now. I think we could think about these things soon, but not quite. What I do think is going to be useful is radar, and that is really due to two things. One of them is, of course, the air game, but the other one is also going to be the build up of our naval forces, because they will be getting these things very soon. So that's nice. We're also going to take care of our resources here, which seem to be fine for now, so I think that's going to be okay. Right, so let's resume the game and let's talk about the year 1938, because the year 1938 is an extremely interesting one from the perspective of strategic air power, because at this point the British for the first time dropped their 10-year planning. So until that point they had assumed that for... What are you guys doing? Oh, I think you're transferring to Egypt via France. Well, why not? Right, so until this point Britain has really considered that there would be no war within the next 10 years at any given point. And 1938 is the time when that restriction gets dropped a little bit, and they think that, well, maybe we cannot be quite in a comfortable position. Germany is making very much aggressive noises, so we think it might very well be the case that we do not have that ability, and that in fact we might be exposed to war a little bit earlier than that. So that's quite a correct assumption, as of course we know. Let's go for Grand Battle Plan Doctrine here. I think that's nice. And at this point, really for the first time since 20 years really, the United Kingdom military is tasked with planning for war and actually making actual preparations, just formulating a strategy. And that strategy very quickly turns out to be like a layered approach. So they realize that they don't have the strength to oppose the Germans right now, so they think the first phase of the war is going to be defensive. The United Kingdom is going to hold out, whereas at the same time Bomber Command is going to be tasked with attacking the Germans and the German industrial city base. So that's kind of in line with pre-war thinking, as we talked about last time. So that's all very nice and very, sensible. But then comes, and then, they will at the same time build up their strength while they're holding off the Germans on ground. They're inflicting damage from the air. They'll be building up their own resources and protect their lines of communications to the New World and everything. And only then in a later phase will they take on the war to the Germans. And it's a very, very interesting thought, I believe, because it's ultimately very close to what happened, but the next thing, so you formulate that big strategy and then it gets to the operational planning. So let's say one echelon down, people are tasked with implementing or formulating a strategy that is sort of in line with these things. And yeah, you know what, let's go for this, and I think that's going to be it for now here. So that's fine. We do have low manpower, we have unassigned divisions. Yeah, let's go for that. And you know what, I think in fact what we want to do here is ask these guys here to be part of this plan here anyway. So yeah, that you do that automatically, and that's fine. Good. So operational people are now looking at these plans, and they immediately realize they're incredibly unrealistic, because the Germans have used the period for the last 5 years to build up their military so strongly, and the UK really has neglected that. So there's a real thinking that, especially in regards to Bomber Command in that second step, hitting the German industrial base, that's not gonna happen. That's just way beyond the capabilities of Bomber Command at that point. Bomber Command really doesn't have enough planes. They don't have the capabilities to launch deep into Germany and do really anything about that. So wait a minute, why is that not ahead of time? I didn't know. Also, I didn't know that the fire control systems were beefed up quite a bit. Yeah, I think the reliability, that's a big buff here. The reliability has gone down or malus on reliability has gone down significantly, and this has actually come up. So that's nice. Yeah, let's think about that briefly here. So yeah, better infantry equipment would obviously be nice. But let's think about this in terms of our air strategy. Anything that we really need from our air strategy point of view? Maybe scout planes would be nice at some point. These things are just way ahead of time yet, so don't think that is something that we want to do. Naval, yeah, I think we would want to do some naval stuff. Is ahead of time. Anti-tank might be useful at some point. Tanks we're not going to use. Infantry equipment, yeah. You know what, let's go for the naval stuff over here. So, sorry, the engineering and then the improved fire control systems. Yeah, there we go. So, Bombing Command doesn't have the air crews, they don't have the airplanes, they don't have the capabilities to hit the Germans. They realised that they could fly in a day, but with the German sort of depth of operations, especially if they don't want to hurt the airspace of the Low Countries, there's no way really how to get to the Germans, especially the rural areas sort of off limits. You could fly from France, but the French are vigorously opposed to bombing of Germany. They say, "Wait, this is only going to result in retaliation on French cities," and the French morale might very quickly break under that strain. So they're having none of that. They don't want to have any strategic bombardment of Germany at all. So that's quite interesting, because now Bomber Command realizes, okay, it cannot really deliver of what Mr. Trenchard has proposed 10 years earlier in 1928. And at this point, really, they have to think about, okay, what's the consequence of that? Are they still going to attack Germany, take very high losses, and probably not result in much of a defeat there? That's not going to work out dramatically well, but of course it could be done. But it also reduces the ability to tackle the next step. So build up the strategy for the future and build up the British forces, because at this point you really have this small bomber command, and this small bomber command forces, they need to be trained up. They need to train, let's say, the further pilots. They need to build, they are the basis from which bomber command will grow in the future. So that's not something that you necessarily want to dip into too much, because these people are exactly pretty much what you need. Let's train these guys up. Let's also briefly look at our logistics. So we are a little bit shy on infantry equipment. That's alright, I suppose. We are a little bit heavy on artilleries, actually. So that's something to consider. Also, I do think that we could actually edit this here to be at least a combat with 10. So that it's a little bit better, I think. Yeah, so let's do that. That should reduce our requirements for infantry equipment quite substantially. Yes, indeed it does. So that's nice. That's working out. And in terms of what we are producing mostly, we do have about 41 military factories. We are using 3 on rifles, 2 on artillery, 2 on support equipment, so that's, yeah, well, just basically 7 out of 41 we are using for ground stuff. Our air naval arm is going to be built up by 2 to 3 factories here maybe. So that's okay, I suppose. You know what, let's dial that down to 17 here, so that at least the next factory is going to go into Sharks, which I think is fine because we do need some reinforcements here. Yeah, so let's call that another 3, so that makes it 10. So let's say 1/4 of our factories are going into something that is non-Air Force related. And all of the other stuff is basically being shuffled into heavy fighters and strategic bombers here. So yeah, we are really going all in on this strategy. Right. That's not what the UK does in 1938. The UK in 1938 really diverges for the very first time from pre-war thinking. Pre-war thinking being that the war bomber will always come through, and that the future air warfare might be that exchange of heavy bomber fleets where one bomber fleet flies into the territory of the others. Don't think we want to do this. Yeah, so that's fine for now. We could do that at a later point. Do we need to build anything up here? I don't think we need a particular political advisor. They're all really not that great. Yeah, we're not converting anything, so that's not really required. Artillery, motorized, this is all nice to have, but really not that dramatically required. I would like to get Yarrow shipbuilders at some point. We don't really need a tank designer. We are very shy on manpower at this point. High command, someone like air superiority would be great. Yeah. Anything else though? Really not that required. I mean, we could go for limited conscriptions. We are going to go through this, and this is a step-by-step approach, so the further you are away from that, the better, the more cost it will be. So I think it's fine to go for this. That should allow us to build up a little bit more there, so that's fine. Home defense done. That's great. We could issue gas masks, which would drive up our war support beyond 25%, which should allow us to potentially go to partial mobilization, although it's not that important. War economy will require a lot more war support though, so I don't think it's that required. It's only 3 percentage points, and we might get that later on anyway. So let's prepare for the inevitable, and that is giving us more factory output, great, and more military factory construction speed, also very good. So, 1938. The bomber will always come through, or will it? Because at this point, if Bomber Command cannot deliver on disrupting the Germans, then there just might be a shot that you could also prepare your defenses against the German bombers. Maybe they are not quite as good as everyone thought. So this is really the point in time where the UK really pulls resources into fighter command, so into their air defenses for the island. And this has really no basis in pre-war thinking. In pre-war thinking, the focus was very much on the bomb, and that derives from the technological situation as it was at the end of World War I, when basically bombers were faster or as fast as most of the fighters. Fighters really weren't that great in terms of speed, so really at that point you could form a reasonable expectation that you would not be that fighters couldn't really catch up to any sort of... Wait a minute, let's assign you to home defense here. I think that's alright, yeah, there we go. And you know what, I think you guys can go ahead and train up a little bit more as well. Likewise with you. You've got that already, so great. Yeah. And, you know, you really could expect that Schnellbomber concept of the Germans, where they would have a very fast two-engine bombers, and they could basically outrun a fighter, and it would not at least be very, very difficult to vector in a fighter to really intercept them. That's happening, and, you know, by 1938, though, you've got the first radar installations, you've got monoplane fighters that are built from an all-metal construction, and it is really... Oh, pre-military factories. And it is really becoming apparent, at least, that there might be a chance for the fighter to intercept the bomber ultimately. What do we want to do here? So I think we are a little bit shy on naval craft, so let's briefly check one thing basically. So we've got the swordfish, we've got the shark. What is your naval attack here? Well, I think it's actually a little bit faster if we do it like this over here in terms of research. And we've got the naval bomber here, so that's fine. And then we've got the naval bomber shark version. So the basic difference here is the costs are much higher for the naval version, of course. But other than that, it seems to be relatively identical. So we would be maybe a little bit more flexible if we continue the production of the Blackburn shark instead of the swordfish. But it would be allowing us to churn out a little bit more in terms of aircraft if we are building actually some swordfish here. So yeah, let's actually go ahead with that and build you up as well. You're going to be low priority. That's going to be alright. Oh, we are a little bit short on rubber now. We'll have to address that at some point. And of course we do want to build more strategic bombers with everything going forward. I also think it might be sense to establish MI6 over here. Which we... Oh, I think this is fine. Let's create the agency over here. It's going to take only 30 days or so. That's alright. Good. So, resources are being put into fighter command. And that's tempting because at this point we really think fighter command could do the job of defending Britain. But, quite crucially, at no point is Britain really going to be sure about that. It's always going to be, you know, associated with a question mark. Do we will it really be possible to defend from any sort of air attack only by looking at fighters and maybe some anti-air guns, but really they can't really expect to fire as quickly as you would expect and hope. Ground support, this is going to be extremely fast because we do have some bonuses there, but is it really that important? We could go for the scout planes, we do need some at some point, but you know what, I think even though it's ahead of time, we're going to go for the Sten gun over here, simply because it's such an important piece of our land combat ability. So yeah, let's go for that. I think that's fine. Insufficient resources. We are buying aluminium even though we don't need to, so let's get rid of that, but let's do buy some rubber, preferably from British Malaya over here, and that's fine. Yeah. So, you've got this certain level of comfort that Fighter Command can maybe protect you, but no one knows exactly. And a lot of people are still thinking that this might just not be how it turns out, and that still the bomber might get through, and that they could be doing an enormous amount of damage to you. And that's really, really starting to become worrying. This is very much ahead of time, but it's still 190 days. You know what? I think it's great because just these two things are so useful. So yeah, let's go for this. Right. So this is really going to last about 3 years. Until 1941, Britain is going to think that there might be an air attack on London. It might be bad. It might be really bad. At this point, British military thinks that about for every ton that the Germans will drop on the UK, there'll be about 75 casualties. So they estimate about the German capabilities to launch attack on the UK aren't actually that far off in terms of the tonnage that the Germans could deliver. At least it's kind of close to what ultimately you'll be seeing later on in actual during the Blitz and items like that. But that figure of 75 casualties per ton of bombs being dropped on the UK is far excessive. It's very, very high. And more importantly, they kind of overestimate the morale effects, the degree of how the civilian population will react. And it's not completely out of the blue. You could think about situations like during World War I when the Germans were actually bombing London with Zeppelins. There was a panic in the UK, and a lot of people abstained from work because they thought it would be too risky to actually go there, and you really had that big effect actually from that. And it wasn't quite, you know, there was a real effect from that, and that was a little bit confirmed during items like the Spanish Civil War when the German planes did bomb items like in the Basque country. So you really had these experiences from that. And you know, this is 1938, so there hasn't been any much activity in terms of World War II yet. But even early on in World War II, that will be confirmed with the bombing of Warsaw, later with the bombing of Rotterdam. Even though the Germans claim that these are military targets, kind of no one really believes them. And on the one hand, because they have been rattling about how they want to destroy everything for quite a long time. Region-wide industrial, what is that? It would just give me a build slot, wouldn't it? Yeah, that's really not worth it at this point. So that's fine. Yeah, and they think, yeah, really, so many convoys. Yeah, now what do we want to do with our navy? Let's briefly think about that here. So we've got all of these anti-submarine warfare hulls. That's nice. I think that's going to be ample for the time being here. So yeah, we don't really need to expand on that at all, I think. What we could do is actually split you though, and combine you with them. I think that's alright. Good. Right, and in terms of submarines, you've all been upgraded? No, you guys haven't. So yeah, let's do upgrade you. That's alright there. How about you? You're fine. You're fine too. How about any sort of training? I mean, you guys are okay. I'm going to talk about the naval setup here before we get into the actual war. But I think for the most part we're seeing that most of our fleets here are fairly well trained up. could train you guys up, and that would cause some damage, which I think would be okay over time. But I do want to build up my fuel reserves here a little bit as well, so maybe not. All of these destroyers here. Well, at the very least, the ABC classes here, we could get you guys here to train up a little bit. Yeah, I think that's going to be okay. Yeah, so you guys will be refurbished here. That's going to be done very quickly, so that's going to be okay. Right, prepare for the inevitable. Done. None of this here is important at all, I think. At least if we're going for a semi-historical route. This is of course useful for the stability, for the war support. Naval rearmament, all nice and everything, but really not that required. You know what? Let's go for air defense over here, because I would like to get some bonuses for the radar research. Speaking of radar, we should actually start to build up a radar station down here in Sussex. It's going to take a while, but I think that's alright still. We have built up, I think, all of the infrastructure down here in Guyana, and that's giving us more aluminium, which is fantastic. Can we build more military factories anywhere over here? No, not in London. So yeah, we are pretty much... yeah, we can build some more over here. That's fine. Okay, great. Yeah, there we go. Let's actually shift the priorities here somewhat and use this to be built up over here. Okay, let's deprioritize that. I don't think it's really required for now. We are going to build that up before the war, but don't really need to do that right now. Let's research this. That's fine. And all very good. Right. So, there's that panic in, or that general level of panic in the population, and in the political spheres as well. You know, they have these parliamentary speeches that basically again confirm that the next war is going to be over extremely quickly in their line of thinking. And let's grab a couple of you here, and let's actually allocate you towards a front line over here as well. This is sort of a minimal front line, but still, I think it's going to be nice to do something against the Italians at some point. So yeah, that's okay. Right, and there's a famous episode in... oh wait, it's actually not that famous. It could be a little bit more. What do we want to do next? I think this is okay. Passive defenses are definitely nice. Air Force Department is also quite okay, and I think important. You know what? I think it's in the theme of this play over here to do that. And we're gonna of course grab the German over here, and we are gonna kindly ask him to go to Berlin and find out what the Germans are up to at this point, because apparently they have been justifying war against us. So, 1938 is also the year of the Munich Conference, and I think we'll be getting to that in Hearts of Iron here as well. This is not it though. And this again is promising to be an interesting year. 25% war support. Yeah, we're not there yet. I mean, it would be nice. It's basically 20% shift in military factories and some additional factories, although it's really not that many for us. I think we do have about 45 civilian factories, so that's basically a shift of 2 civilian factories or so. Really not that big a deal, I think. So yeah, we might actually save up a little bit here on the political power. And there we go. There's the Munich Conference. So, Germany demands for the Sudetenland region of Czechoslovakia, where a significant number of ethnic Germans live, have come to head. Adolf Hitler has positioned forces along the Czechoslovakian border in preparation for an attack. Talks are being held in Munich between Britain, France, Italy, and Germany, and you know, without the Czechoslovakians. So we're going to go with the historical option here of the Western betrayal, which is not going to be nice. It's going to be an act of cowardice. But this is, you know, the essence of appeasement politics, because, as we said, the UK at this point realizes they're really not strong enough to take on the Germans. Now, the Sudetenland also has the feature of being this mountainous region along Czechoslovakia. So, at this point, we think that there is some level of peace in the air, but it's also really quite a difficult proposition for the Czechs, because they have now basically lost all of their defenses and they'll be overrun by the Germans very soon. But at this point in time at least... Oh, close the Burma Road? No, I don't think we want to close the Burma Road. Where's that? Yeah, no. Definitely not going to take that. Insufficient resource though, and we are starting to see a shortage of aluminium here. Now, who do we want to buy from? Probably British Malaya, I think. Yeah, that's going to be nice. Do we need the rubber here? Well, it's okay, all in all. We're going to send a special representative here. Right, so let's return to the Munich Conference. As that happens, there's a moment of panic in the United Kingdom when there's the thinking that, oh, it might actually come to war. And that is, of course, going to be a very, very drastically negative impact. Do you want to do anything over here? Steal blueprints, assets, passive defense is also nice. I do think invisible ink is going to be nice because we need a little bit more intel from Germany. So yeah, that's going to be okay. Right. More development here for the army, which is always nice and welcome, even though this is not, you know, the most critical aspect that we are considering. Still, there's the question of scout planes. Still a lot of naval infrastructure that we could think about. We are developing this here, so that's nice. We are developing that, so that's okay too. We could go for anti-tank. It's not going to take a long time. We could also think about better artillery here, and it's not going to take very long either. It's just going to be 88 days, so I think that's fine as well. Yeah. So, moment of panic in the United Kingdom. There might be a war. There might be a war, and there might be good reason to be afraid of that war, because, again, we know all of these bomber fleets are going to come in basically the first 2 hours, and they're going to wipe out London, and then there's going to be mass panic, and, you know, you want to get out before the mass panic, and maybe that is something that we have seen in, you know, the current crisis as well, that maybe people sometimes overreact just a little bit, and, you know, go on panic buying sprees and everything. So they actually flee London. There's actually traffic jams, great traffic jams, as hundreds of thousands of people try to get away from London and try to get into the countryside to basically escape the city and the impending bombardment. And from today's perspective, that looks a little bit silly, but I don't think at the time it's a really fair assessment to do that, because they didn't know. They were thinking, they were operating on the principle that there would be a lot of casualties, and that would be obviously pretty bad. So, and there might, you know, be a breakdown in civil order. No one really knew at that point. So it is, I think, not completely unreasonable to think that that is something that might actually happen at that point. So there's this panic, and this panic already indicates that there might be something which is going to be hugely problematic in the future. So let's briefly check a couple of things over here. So yeah, let's build more of these things. We do have a lot more air fleets here, so we should grab these guys, especially since we do have enough fuel, and grab a couple of more squadrons over here. So build up a couple more heavy fighters here. I do tend to like them in groups of 200. Typically, I think theoretically the best way to do that is go as small as possible, but, you know, I don't want to do micromanagement until the end of the day, so let's go ahead with that. That's fine. And then we've found a couple of more strategic bomber groups here, and I think that's going to be okay too. I think for now we can actually go ahead with a couple of smaller ones over here. So let's deploy 2 groups, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to afterwards ask them to become a little bit larger over time. So that should be fine, so that we are basically filling up these 2 squadrons, and you can go ahead for day training please as well. So that's great. Yeah, there we go. And that should basically draw basically most of the stuff that we have. Probably we can even go ahead and found another squadron over here, and just go with more heavy fighters here and set that up to be training or as well. There we go. Okay, so this is not exactly a comforting place to be in, especially when you think about what that could mean for the war of the future, in regards to when already in peacetime people are fleeing London, and it's really not that great. Let's briefly check on things over here. So more chances. That's nice commander training. I don't think that's what we really need. Diplomatic training, this is not what we're going to do. Propaganda, again, not yeah, but cryptology is definitely something that we are going to look at in the not too distant future. We're going to also recruit someone. This gentleman over here has also some German speaking skills, so we are going to just deploy him here to Western Germany and just build up more knowledge about the Germans like that. I think actually we can potentially also infiltrate the civilian administration here, and that is something that we're actually going to do. So let's go ahead and do that. Good. Going to take 90 days, but it's going to give us more information about the effectiveness of our bombing campaign. So that being said, we are leaving the year 1938 over here, and I think we can accelerate. No, we can't accelerate that further, but that's fine. We are pretty much on full fuel, so what I suppose we could do is actually send you guys here to no, not patrolling, to training for a little while over here, and have you basically use up a little bit of that fuel as we are finishing the end of the year. So, that being said, I think this is a good place to put in a cut. So, thank you very much for watching. Next time we'll be talking about the year 1939, and that's, of course, an even more exciting year, in a way, than the year 1938. Thank you very much for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed. Do leave a like and all of that. And until next time, bye-bye.